This is just a follow-up to my last video on the shorted buffer PCB on the LG 50-inch PG3000, and I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm just going to show you the general process of removing this IC and how difficult it is. What I have here is my RE7500, which has a lower heater and an upper heater. What I normally do is I put the PCB on here and I bring it up to about between 60 and 100 degrees, and that will soften the glue and should enable me to remove the actual heatsink and some of that glue off. I'm going to also have to put some Kapton tape across my connectors here, just in case they get some heat damage. PCB is now in the jig itself here. You can move it back and forth, and what I have to do with this is I've got to get that laser pointer somewhere centre on the heatsink. This is my thermocouple. That will tell me my temperature of the PCB, which will be displayed on the front of the RE7500. It's at 22 degrees, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on to preheat, and you'll see the preheat shown on the LCD screen. And what I've got to do now is wait now until that comes up to about between 60 and 100 degrees, and that should have softened the glue on the heatsink. Okay, we're approaching about 90 degrees now. I'm just going to turn off this lower heater, and I'm going to just put something down here, stop myself burning. I'm going to have to hold the PCB and see what happens. As you can see, it comes off quite easy. I've exposed some of the pins of the ICs, the buffer ICs, and I'm just going to do a few checks. This is the buffer IC. I think is just gone. I don't see any bulge and anything burnt on it, but if I go along here, you can clearly see the print going over to this IC. There's no shorts there. If you come along here, this print here goes to the buffer over here, and you see similar ones over here in this, and you have no short on them over here. And the IC is a 3407F. These are available. I think I might even have a few in stock. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove that IC from this buffer board in the Jovi RE7500. It's preheating now, and when it gets to about 60 degrees I will turn up the heaters and I will bring it up to about 120 degrees. Underneath the IC itself, it's actually soldered right underneath the IC. You will not be able to get an iron to it, so that's why you have to put it in some kind of a jig like this. You can see the laser pointer there, where it's aiming the heat directly in the center of the IC, and when it gets up to 120 degrees, I'll bring over the top heater, and that'll bring it up to its melting point. My thermocouple device is here. That has to be mounted as close as possible to the IC that you're removing. It's at 60 degrees now. I'm just going to turn up my lower heater, and when it gets to 120 degrees I will bring over my upper heater like so, and then bring it up to the melting point. I've added some flux, put a little bit more in. Just helps it a little bit in the unsoldering process. We're about 115 degrees. I'm just going to bring over our upper heater now and bring the IC now up to the melting point. We're at about 195 degrees at the moment. I'm just going to give it a quick try. Not loose yet. (200 degrees). Turn off both my heaters. And let the temperature cool down. Have the IC out, and I've cleaned up the solder, so there's no shorts left behind after taking out the IC. And I'm just going to run that test again that I did on the output of the buffer IC to the screen, and I'm just going to run this along the connectors. Now this is not running this on the part that connects to the actual tabs that come over the screen. This is on the bits that are soldered to the PCB, so I'm not damaging the actual connector itself. And you see there's no shorts there. I'll come down here to the ground. And no shorts. No shorts on any of the connectors. I'm going to just clean this up a little bit further now, and I'm going to start putting in the IC. And if you can see the reason, if you look at the bottom of the IC, you got an area that gets soldered directly onto these 4 points here, and you can't get at that with a soldering iron. The only way you can do it is by bringing up the board up to the melting point of solder. I normally use around 220. There is difference in between leaded and unleaded, but I normally find around 220 degrees, and on larger ICs just go a little bit higher. The ICs are available on eBay. 3407F, if you search there for them, you will get them. I have some here from the last buffer I did. I have to do a little bit further cleaning on this area here, get rid of this solder on the squares, and then I'm going to resolder that IC in. The first thing I have to do is put some fresh solder on the bottom of the IC. I'll solder the legs first and get them in place, and then I'll put it on the Jovi RE7500 and bring it up to the melting point of solder, and it should solder this area beneath the buffer IC. Then what I have to do is I got to get some glue that will insulate these pins. I cannot leave these pins uninsulated because they will arc over. Add some flux. And then what I do is I just put loads of solder on the pins, and I'm using the flux as a kind of lubricant. I'm not actually rubbing the iron off the pins because that could damage them. I'm freshening up the solder, and I'm bringing the ball around. That cleans up all the pins nice and fresh for removal. Now I get my solder wick. I'm going to start here on the inside, get rid of all this excess on the rub the excess off. And now I'm going to get some alcohol and spray it on it. And I can still see two of the pins here shorted. Yeah. That's grand. Okay. And now, before I start putting in this IC, I'm going to inspect the pads with a magnifier, just to make sure there's no little slivers of solder shorting out those pins. The IC is just tacked in with a couple of bits of solder on here and a little bit here, just to hold it in place so it doesn't shift when I'm moving it from the bench to the Jovi jig. I'm going to put in the jig now and just let it bring it up to the melting point of solder, and that should melt the solder underneath, and it should melt this solder here, and it should float it into place, and then I should be able to solder the legs with a normal soldering iron, and that's done. I'm going to put some flux on the IC as well. Just around the there's flux underneath it as well. I'm just going to put some on the pins. I got to now switch on the preheater to bring the board up to about 60 degrees. I'll pause the video now, and when it's up to the next stage I'll start filming again. We're now at about 70 degrees. I'm going to just turn on the lower heater to reflow, and then bring it up to about it's about 90 degrees to 100 degrees. I will bring over my upper heater and then bring it up to the melting point of solder. I'll pause the video and I'll reshoot when the gets up to the correct temperature. We're at around 110 degrees now. I'm going to bring over my top heater and I'll bring it up to about 220 to 230 degrees, and I'll pause the video again and I'll get back to you when it's nearly finished. We're near the temperature now. 212, 13, 215, 217, 218, 220, 21, 22, 23, 4, 5. Okay, I'm going to turn the upper heater off and the lower heater off. And carefully bring this over. If I shake this at all, it will move the IC. I'm going to let it cool down there. If I put the blower on now, it will blow the IC off the PCB. So I've got to just bring it down a little bit more. The solder is still very molten on the pins of the IC. I like to get it under 200 degrees, say 190 degrees before I put the fan on. We're just around 200 now. Turn the fan on. I'll pause the video now and I will start filming again when it's cooled down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to solder these pins in, and I'm just going to show you one side. There's loads of solder on it at the moment, so I just run this here along it. What you can do then is get a lot of the solder off just like that, and then what I would do is I get the excess solder off with my wick. And it will be a long process of trying to get the solder between the pins. It is impossible to solder both all the legs individually because they're so closely spaced. So it's a matter of putting loads of solder on and then removing it with the solder wick. The IC is now soldered in place, and the next thing I have to do now is I've got to get some glue around these pins to insulate them. Then put the heatsink in. I have the buffer IC all glued and the heatsink put on and all the parts put back in the TV, and as you can see we now have a picture, and we do have sound. I've just turned down the sound, but we still have one problem, and there's one line of information missing on the lower part of the screen. This isn't anything to do with the upper buffer. This will be what the lower buffer controls, and that is a problem with the screen. While the repair on the buffer board has been successful, I'm afraid it needs a new screen as well. It's lucky I didn't spend all that money out on a YPCB and the buffer PCB just to find the screen gone as well. But it shows you just replacing the buffer IC. I got that buffer IC for about £10 sterling, and so really this repair has cost me just £10. It hasn't been around the 300 as it would be if I bought the Y buffer and the Ysus PCB. I'm going to leave it running for a while just to make sure that these boards can run, and that there's nothing wrong with the Y PCB that doesn't blow up when it heats up. But it has been running now for numerous hours. Time will tell now, but as you can see, the screen is gone as well. I hope that's of some help to people out there that's considering changing these buffer ICs. They are quite difficult, and you do need plenty of skill to replace them. Thanks for watching.